Hello, today we are going to talk about manual practices, and I'm going to give a few examples of how I do magic right now from an Islamic standpoint. Now I have to define a few words because a lot of the people will not understand what I'm talking about. So I first have to make some definitions. Okay, so I define the word magic synonymous with the word occult, which means that occult is everything which is hidden or concealed from the human eyes, right? That also involves things which are detectable via tools we have, such as microorganisms. So, for example, microbiology is not occult, despite the fact that it is not visible with the naked eye. But the jinn are, for example, the part of the occult, and so are the angels, and so are the spirits of the dead, right? So my word for magic is synonymous with the word occult, okay? So when I say that I practice magic, what I mean is that I'm dealing with the occult. Now, within Islamic theology, there is a specific form of the occult which is known as sihr. Sihr is basically malignant, painful magic which involves impurity and blasphemies. And that is forbidden according to all Islamic scholars. But in many earlier eras, other aspects of the occult were prohibited, but also some of the aspects of the occult were allowed. And so it was always a gray area, what is sihr, what is allowed form of the occult, and there is many works debating on what form of occult are allowed and what form of occult are banned. But when I am talking about magic, I am talking about the occult. I am not necessarily talking about sihr, aka malignant, painful magic, which is forbidden according to the Islamic law. Now, I have to point out that because of this terminology confusion, which we have in the modern occult community in the West, a lot of people don't understand what the jinn like Paimon actually teach people, right? So Paimon basically teaches occult in its darker forms, right? But majority of the things Paimon will teach you, or I will not say majority of the things Paimon will teach you, but good portion of the things Paimon will teach you will fall under the definition of sihr, which is malignant, painful, spiritual operations, which usually involve impurities or blasphemies, right? Now we have to define impurity and we have to define blasphemy as terms. So blasphemy is a purposeful inversion of religious ritual for the reason of invoking certain forces, and impurity literally means impurity. It means disgusting and impure substances such as human bone powder, uh, reliquia from malignantly killed person, and all kinds of things like that. So Paimon teaches occultism in many of its forms, but a good portion of what he teaches is sihr. Now we define sihr and we define the occult. So let's say you are working with somebody who is like Paimon, right? So you are working with the jinn of the darker nature. So some of the things he will teach you will be not dark magic, and some of the things he teach you will be dark magic. Because Paimon is a genic individual. He is external intelligence and he knows a lot of information. And so some of the information he teaches you will be, forbidden by the Islamic law. Some of the information he gives will be permitted by the Islamic law. And that's the reason why I kind of don't publish a lot of the information Paimon gives me, because I personally don't use it. A lot of the information Paimon gives me I find unusable for me now. And it's not even like I am asking for it. He just gives me the information, knowing that I will probably not use majority of it. But I basically wanted to give this introduction specifically with Paimon, because there is a note of my relationship with Paimon which perfectly illustrates how I see relationship with Jinn as a whole. So for those who are aware of a lot of the older content on the channel, which is semi-hidden now, Paimon saved my life 3 times on 3 different occasions. And I'm talking about being physically saved from committing suicide or being killed by something or someone, right? In a physical sense. I'm not talking about esoteric mumbo jumbo cursed energy throwing stuff. I'm talking about somebody or something physically endangering you and you getting help, or me trying to kill myself and then he basically paralyzing my body so I can't do it. I'm talking about this degree of basically saving somebody's life. Now, during my study of the occult, in the first sense, I said in this video, in the sense of esoteric knowledge, I came to an undeniable conclusion that Islamic theology is correct and I converted to Islam. That created a large protest of Paimon as an entity, because Paimon is anti-Muslim. He belongs to the Jinnic tribes, which are not liking Muslim people and Islam as a religion. And he's pretty open about it. It's not like he hides it or anything. But despite of my conversion, we have managed to work together. But I am pretty selective in how I apply information he gives, because I don't want to apply it in a way which is contrary to the Islamic regulations most of the time. There were a few instances where my emotions were not controllable and I just did what I had to do against the Islamic law, basically to have some personal grievances settled. I honestly regret it, but one of the unfortunate consequences of doing harmful spiritual operations is that they are really difficult to reverse. And so once you do them, you can do what you can to reverse them as somebody who inflicted them, but the consequences will stay. It's like when you break somebody's hand, you can help them heal the hand, but there will always be the change in the bone, even if the hand heals. You can't delete the fact that the hand is broken, right? So there is something which I had to say on that, because a lot of the people, you know, who are your foes, adversaries in this esoteric space, they throw stuff at you and then they just want to say, ha ha ha, I removed it. And the thing is, yeah, you removed it, Mr. NN, but I still have to suffer the consequences of your stuff. And so this is why you have to be extremely careful when you talk about and work with energies, especially darker ones. Now, my and Paimon's relationship is based on the fact that he saved me twice, and it's based on the fact that I trust him. So how I see it is basically God allowed Paimon, source of all creation, allowed Paimon to do what he did. and Paimon had the freedom to help me. He also had the freedom to harm me, and he chose to help me for his own interest and his own agenda. He didn't do it because he likes people like me. He probably had some kind of an interest in doing so, but it doesn't change the fact that he did it, and he proved that he did it, so I can't deny, even if I would like. And so this is basically how majority of jinn or human interactions go, is you meet a jinn as an individual, and jinn meets you as an individual, and then you work with the jinn as an individual. Saying that there are some kinds of broad rules to it is basically a form of a misinformation. Like, there is a degree of rules you have to follow in order to fall into a deep trance. But once you go into that trance and you start conversing with the jinn kind or angels, you have to understand that no matter what spiritual intelligence you are talking with, spirit of that person, angel, jinn or angelical hybrid, those exist. Those are individuals. And so those relationships develop on an individual basis. Obviously, the entities we work with, they have personalities, but they are not broad abstract concepts. They are persons. And so your relationship with it goes on an individual personal level. And that's what I really need you guys to understand. And I know a lot of you are kind of thinking, who is this individual? Why is he throwing this philosophical stuff on me? I just want to know practical techniques, okay? I'm gonna give you practical techniques in the continuation of this clip. And we're gonna talk about two different more techniques to attract spiritual entities, which I have experimented with and worked with. Now we're gonna explain the concept of the Qadam in Islamic mysticism, and I also gonna explain the power of salawat prayer, right? In Islamic mysticism, we're gonna talk about it. So first, let's talk about Qadams. Okay. So every verse in the Quran, every surah in the Quran has a certain energy to it, right? And once you go into alternative state of consciousness, you basically are able to feel that energy as you repeat the surah, right? And so if you repeat the surah enough times in the sacred space, you will be visited by entity. That entity will be celestial in nature. Sometimes that entity is like a celestial jinn, sometimes it's more angelic. The closer your relationship with the surah is, the more angelic the entity is. So let's say that you are working with the surah and you are repeating it and the entities start coming. The first entities will be kind of celestial genic entities, and then more and more you repeat, more and more of angelic entities will come. So basically, you will attract the entities who are corresponding to the energy of the surah you are reciting. So some of the surahs, when recited, will attract more benevolent entities, while some of other surahs will in this way attract more fierce entities. But all of them will not be demons, and they will not be extremely chaotic and destructive. They will be kind of tied to the current of order. And so Qadams are those entities who are corresponding to the energy currents of the surahs from the Quran. And they basically help you channel that energy and work with it. It's basically their duty. So we are going to demonstrate here how to call the Qadams and work with them. So first you have to do the ritual washing, and then you have to raise the sacred space with the divine names. Now I already did it, and now I'm gonna present to you how to call Qadam. Okay, I'm going to recite Surah Al-Fatiha basically, and that's the surah I mostly use because it is the easiest one and the first surah of the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. I call you Qadams of this verse to come. And then you basically just repeat this process in darkness, in complete darkness, in pitch black, while wearing a fumigated t-shirt with good incenses and being completely clean. And depending on your level of spiritual development, after a long period of time of this repetition with this request in the end, the Qadam will appear. More and more you recite, more and more Qadams will come, and more you recite, the more celestial will be the nature of the Qadam you attract. So this is basically a method you can use to attract the Qadam of any verse of the Quran or surah of the Quran you wanna recite. You apply this rule. Now there is a lot of Sufi teachers who claim that every surah of the Quran has a number of recitations. You have to repeat it depending on the numerical value of the surah and the verse. Now basically I agree that that is the case. Numerical values play an important role, but what I find more effective is you simply repeat the surah and the request until the energy starts building up, and then you basically keep repeating as much as you can to attract as much Qadams as you can to have more powerful result. Now there is a technique I discovered. So the technique I discovered is related to Salawat prayer. It is a prayer you recite at the end of every prayer session. In Islam, it's called Salawat prayer, and it's basically a blessing upon Muhammad and his family. And my Arabic isn't perfect, so you are free to watch another videos where better pronunciation is recited of any surah or a prayer you want to do. I'm basically here just giving the example of what I do, right? So I am not declaring that I am ultimate authority on the subject matter. So I'm gonna recite Salawat prayer and I'm gonna explain how I use it. Okay, so this is the prayer. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidul Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidul Majid. Okay. So you recite this prayer or any variation of salawat out there. There is like a lot of variations. And then after every repetition of the salawat you say, I call you Prophet Muhammad, and I call you spirits of all the saints and righteous people to protect me in this prayer and to make sure that this prayer is heard. So I basically do this before every prayer and after every prayer. And I make sure that I fall into trance when I do it. And I feel enormous amount of energy coming into me and empowering me. The energy is green and it really builds my energy body better than anything I tried. And I tried a lot of things over the years, and this seems to be really effective for me. So, what is really important when you recite any prayer or verse of anything, really, is that you kind of clear your mind and go into trance. You'll breathe really slow, and you do your prayers away from any distractions, mostly in the dark room, and you do it at the appropriate time as much as possible. So when you start praying in that alternative state of mind, you're gonna feel the energy coming into you, and you have to pull as much of that energy into you as possible. Now, it is not the breathing really which fills you with energy, it is the prayer. But the breathing basically makes you relaxed enough and makes you enter the alternative state of mind so you are aware of what is actually going on. And this seems to be in line with people who say that in order for prayers to be effective, you have to be completely focused on it. And in order to be completely focused on it, you basically have to turn off your mind. And out of all of the methods I found for turning off your mind, being in the dark room and breathing really slowly and letting yourself kind of fall asleep and being that state between waking and sleeping consciousness seems to be the most effective. And I, in my experience, had a really positive experience with Salavat prayer, which I listed earlier. Now, if you wanna do more experimentation with Salavat prayer, what I advise is you go into the dark room and you recite Salavat prayer in any of its variations. And at the end of every repetition, you say that you want to meet any saint in Islamic tradition and you kind name the individual. And then, after many hours of repetition in that alternative state of mind, when the energy builds up, you will be able to talk to the soul of that saint. If you can go to the grave associated with that saint, the process will be much faster. They will usually give you the advice related to prayer and divine names, or just give you a mystical experience. Those entities are not good for material stuff. They are not interested in helping you with that, unless we are talking about minimal nutrition. You know, if you are starving, you can call them up, but otherwise, it's not something they would be interested in. There is also a warning I have to give. Make sure that you have a proper shielding, so that when you do operations like this, some of the darker gen can't come into your space and pretend to be the entity you're trying to call. I mean, if you are experienced, you would pretty easily be able to recognize what is going on. But for those who are not experienced, I advise learning how to absorb energy from divine names and protect yourself before attempting any of this. Because if you don't have enough experience, what can really easily happen is you wouldn't be able to physically complete the operation, or some of the darker gen will kind of try to trick you. So that's basically what I have for you today. If you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel. And the reason why all of my videos are kind of having instruction of going into the dark room, breathing slowly, falling into trance, and then in the sacred space doing the ritual for a really long time is because I really think it is necessary to invest really long time in order to have powerful spirit manifestations, and there is really no way around it. But there is a catch. Once you learn how to go into that really deep trance, so you can see entities, every single time you do it, it becomes easier. So over time, the amount of energy and time you need to spend to get full manifestation becomes significantly shorter. But regardless of that, the time is necessary, and the darkroom is necessary, and falling into trance is necessary, and having the sacred space is necessary. So regarding my Arabic pronunciation, I know it's terrible, and I know that there are many variations of the Salawat out there, and I know that I probably butchered half of the words in Fatiha, but let's be real, Arabic is not my native language, and no matter how I try, it will not sound perfect. So there is nothing I can do about that. My intention is not to corrupt the text if I pronounce something wrong. Keep in mind that I am not a native Arabic speaker, and I'm trying to introduce Islamic esotericism to a really interesting audience. So I am also taking into consideration that I have to speak in a way in which my audience will understand. Now, there is something I also wanted to address in this video shortly, and it is the fact that Allah is simply another name for the Brahman or the source. And that's abstracted by the fact that a lot of people today believe in anthropomorphic version of entity they call as Allah, which has no actual connection to the original text. I read Quran multiple times, and it's pretty clear that all of the anthropomorphic descriptions of God are metaphoric, because anthropomorphic God is not describable by the terms used to describe God in the text. If God is described as infinite, then he cannot be anthropomorphic, because anthropomorphism implies limitation. And if God is infinite, he cannot have any human-like personality, because having a human-like personality implies limitation. So all of the anthropomorphic descriptions of God in the Quran have to be understood as a metaphor, otherwise the book is full of contradictions and it becomes absurd. And one of the key attributes of God are wisdom and logic. And so that is also something I have to point out. And this will be really controversial to many people on the channel, but I hope this video is useful to a lot of people. So you have explanation of genic human relations, you have explanation of how to use verses of the Quran, and you have explanation of how to use salawat to call the saints of the Islamic tradition. Okay, there is one last thing I have to say about Qadams. So the abilities of the Qadams of the particular verse and surah of the Quran depend on the meaning of the verse, not just the literal meaning, but also esoteric meaning, deeper spiritual meaning. Thank you for watching, and see you tomorrow.